we're going to jump into our lesson. And actually, we're going to go back to when Jesus was alive in the Bible story. We're back in the book of Luke. We're in chapter 19, and we're reading verses 1 through 10. And it's entitled Zacchaeus the Tax Collector. Have you guys ever heard of Zacchaeus before? Well, this is a story I love to teach, so I'm super excited about it. So we're going to jump in, okay? Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. Now, Jericho tells us where, tells us the town, and this was during the time of Jesus' ministries, this 3 years. And at this point, he was very popular, and people were very curious to find out more about what he was teaching. So when he went into a town, people knew and people went to see him. And if you remember back then, there weren't hotels or anything like that, right? And there weren't restaurants, not like what we think of. So if someone came to your house, you put them up to sleep, like strangers sleeping in your house, and you fed them as well. So that was a very common courtesy. That way, if you were living in Bible times and you ever had to travel somewhere, you knew someone would take care of you. So Jesus goes into Jericho, and by this point, it's pretty popular. So who do you think is going to take care of him? Who do you think would want him to stay? Maybe like the mayor or the Pharisees? So they didn't always agree with what Jesus was teaching, but those were the popular people in the town, right? Let's find out. So we know he's passing through Jericho. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was very wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but being a short man, he could not because of the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree. How interesting, they actually tell us what kind of tree. A sycamore fig tree, didn't know that existed, to see him since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and he said to him, Zacchaeus. How do you know his name? Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. Okay, so now we know Jesus was going through Jericho. We know that he had to find some place to stay. And we know he's going to Zacchaeus' house. Okay, it's not okay. Let me tell you why. Do you remember when I said what Zacchaeus' job was? He was a tax collector, the chief, like the head tax collector. We don't have tax collectors like that anymore. So if we think in Jesus' time, remember Rome, which is in Italy, which is far away, their soldiers spread out all over Europe and conquered the people and ruled over the people. So in Jesus' time, Romans were in charge. They weren't Jews. Romans, remember, they worshipped Caesar, their king. So they were different. But the Romans had an interesting way of running whatever country they conquered or whatever area they conquered. So Rome wanted money. So all the land that they now owned and were in charge of, they would get the people to send money back to Rome. So Rome was really, really wealthy. The way they did that, they would hire local people. And the local person would get the job of tax collector. Okay, so they were Jewish. He was Jewish, and Zacchaeus was Jewish, but he worked for Rome. So the way a tax collector worked was Rome would determine how much money each person living in a town needed to give. Maybe it was based on what they did for a living, how much land they owned, what have you. So Zacchaeus would have to collect that, and the people had to pay him, or there was probably painful consequences. But that wasn't it. It didn't stop there. So Zacchaeus collected however much money Rome said, and then he collected however much he wanted. So he would get all this money, he'd give the amount to Rome, and he'd keep the rest for himself. And it says right in here, that he was a very wealthy man. He was wealthy because he stole from all his neighbors, all the people he grew up with. He would steal their money. And the people hated him because they had to give him their money because the Roman soldiers would make sure they did. So if you were a tax collector, it's probably pretty good for you because you could get as much money as you wanted. Does anyone like you? So why, if Jesus, who's all about love and kindness and helping your fellow man, why is he going and staying with the tax collector? Doesn't really make sense, does it? Why would he go with someone that steals? Let's find out. Okay. Okay, so we know this. So Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your home today, or your house. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. Sure, he was very special, right? Jesus chose him. All the people saw this and began to mutter, he is gone to be the guest of a sinner. Do you think they were happy about that? No. So what do you think happened when Jesus went to Zacchaeus' house and had dinner? Do you think they talked? Do you think Jesus maybe shared about God? Now we also know that Zacchaeus came to see Jesus. So Zacchaeus was curious. Well, I have to share whatever happened in that house. We don't know. They didn't write that down. But this is what they did write down. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, look, Lord. So he's praying, right? Here and now, I give half of my possessions to the poor. So after talking to Jesus, Zacchaeus gives away half of everything he owns, and he gives it to the poor and those in need. That's a pretty big deal, because we know he was very wealthy, right? And if I have cheated anybody, he's cheated everyone in his town, right? Because he's stolen from them. If I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back. I will pay back 4 times the amount. So these are 2 huge things. Zacchaeus, right from the start, is giving away half of everything, half of his money, half of his wealth to the poor. And then he says, if I've cheated anyone, he's cheated everyone in that town. He will repay them back, not just what he stole from them, 4 times. So he's going to go from being a very wealthy man to not. He's going to go from being someone that stole from all his neighbors and made his wealth off of hurting others, to someone that's going to help everyone around him at his own risk, right? He's going to lose all his money. After one meal with Jesus, he is totally changing his life around. Can you imagine his neighbors that hated him there in Jericho when they saw this change in him? Can you imagine what they were thinking? Can you imagine how powerful they must have thought Jesus was? Powerful in that whatever he shared changed Zacchaeus from the inside, changed his heart, stopped making him greedy and want money. Instead, had him open up his hands and give away all of his money, and to those that he had hurt. That is huge. Okay, so let's see. Jesus said to him, wonder what Jesus said. Today, salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost. Okay, that's interesting. So that reminds us that Zacchaeus was Jewish. He was just like everybody else in Jericho. And we also know salvation has come to this house, that Zacchaeus has accepted God and Jesus, right? And he's realized he wasn't living don't know if I should say the right way, a good way. He wasn't living a way that pleased God, right? And he changed. For the Son of Man came to seek, so Jesus came to seek and to save what was lost. Zacchaeus was lost, right? Zacchaeus was not living a godly life. Zacchaeus was stealing and hurting others. And instead of Jesus ignoring him and letting him go on and live in the sin he was living in, Jesus singled him out. So what a blessing. He saved Zacchaeus. And then what a huge story. Because remember, back then there wasn't newspapers or TVs or computers or the internet. So word didn't spread. Remember, word spread with stories. The story of the change in Zacchaeus after one meal with Jesus is huge. And it was a great teaching tool for others. Like, if this man that had made so many bad choices could change, anyone could. And everyone benefited in that town from Zacchaeus changing his ways. That's why I love this story. Because when you just read it, most of us remember Zacchaeus was short and had to climb a tree. And Jesus had dinner with him. That's great. Jesus had dinner with him. Jesus had dinner with a tax collector. Jesus made the tax collector turn away from sin into good. Jesus can heal and help anyone, right? How exciting is this story? So I hope if you ever hear the word Zacchaeus, the name Zacchaeus again, you kind of remember that what a tax collector was and how hated he was and how Jesus used him as an example and helped him. So we are done. Let's say grace, okay? Grace. Maybe you guys are going to go have dinner or lunch now. Let's just pray. God, thank you. Thank you for the story of Zacchaeus. Thank you for making sure this story was included in our learning this year. Thank you for showing us that you can do mighty things. And thank you for showing us that even when Zacchaeus was making all those bad choices and turning away from you over the years, you never gave up on him. And that you never give up on us no matter what we do. There's nothing we can do so bad that you'll stop loving us. Thank you for that. And thank you for all the wonderful people you've put in our life. And please let us always remember how much we're loved. Amen. Bye, guys.